Good evening, Tanse Anine. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. The families of at least 28 missing children in Manawan, Quebec, waited 2 years for a status report on the baby's law. It's meant to help them find answers. That status report came out last week, but did families get the information they hoped for? Well, with more, here's Lindsay Richardson.
While the presentation of the second annual report on Quebec's baby's law was held at a high school close to home, it's been a long and trying journey for the Atikamekw of Manawan.
S'il y avait un prix Nobel pour la résilience, je crois que c'est les familles qui l'auraient.
In this gym, politicians from every party and families of the 28 children who disappeared or died while hospitalized outside of Manawan as far back as the 1950s.
On ne sait pas si on va trouver justice.
Quebec's Bill 79, the baby's law, gives the government legal power to access information from institutions involved. The first status report was presented to the Innu of Pakwashipi in 2022. And according to the second, quote, we realize this year the number of children and families is greater than we had imagined.
Mais c'est quand même horrible de savoir qu'on cherche plus d'une centaine d'enfants.
More than 130 now, in fact. Some families outside Manawan have received answers about their missing. Children adopted out, others confirmed dead. But in Manawan,
mais pour le moment, nous n'avons aucune idée où repose le corps de notre sœur Violetta.
The Dubé family pushed for years to find out what happened to Violetta, taken away at birth and declared dead, though her death certificate says she died at a month old. The 6 living Dubé sisters want their elderly mother, Delima, to visit Violetta's grave before she dies. And unfortunately, we'll have to wait a little longer.
Je pensais que de l'avoir trouvée, mais non. J'avais beaucoup d'émotions un matin.
Il y a aussi les membres de l'opposition parce que, comme vous le savez, c'est une loi qui a été adoptée à l'unanimité.
Despite her background as an investigative journalist, Quebec's special advisor on missing Indigenous children knows how hard it is to dig up decades-old information.
Des fois, on ne trouve pas. On a beau ouvrir tous les tiroirs, puis il n'y a plus rien dans les tiroirs. Ou pas suffisamment de choses pour répondre aux questions des parents.
But she's obtained results before, which makes news of her upcoming departure in June hard to swallow.
On veut que tu restes. Parce que la confiance, elle est là.
Come June, research and outreach will be taken over by the Manawan-based Awashak Association, who will be expanding the scope of the searches to Cree and Inuit territory, while also unraveling their own hidden history.
La loi 79 est là pour 10 années. Si on a encore besoin de plus, ben on demandera à ce temps-là.
Meanwhile, at this 2-year mark, a DNA database is growing, and a judge is expected to rule on the first exhumation requests facilitated by the baby's law. No word yet on compensation for the families or charges possibly being laid. But in the 2-year report, Elder Richard Kistabich says, without a doubt, there were crimes committed. However,
c'est un travail qui demande non seulement du courage, mais qui demande aussi de la patience.
The numbers increase, and the work continues. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Manawan, Quebec.
Well, we want to hear what you think about the missing children and the baby's law. Here's how to continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca, or you can leave us a comment on our website at aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. The mother of a man shot by Campbell River RCMP is holding an art exhibit to remember those who died in violent interactions with police. APTN's Tina House has this story.
It was on July the 8th, 2021, that Jared Lowndes was stopped at this Tim Hortons drive-thru in Campbell River. He had an outstanding warrant, according to RCMP. And according to RCMP, they deployed a police dog into his vehicle where Jared was alone with his dog. Jared then allegedly stabbed the police dog, which his family claims was self-defense. And that's when police opened fire, shooting Jared 4 times, including in the face. Lowndes' mother, Laura Holland, has been calling for an inquiry into her son's death. Supporting her are advocates and community leaders. She confronted officers at the Campbell River RCMP detachment on July the 20th, 2021.
You understand every time I close my eyes, every time I close my eyes, I see my son's brains blown out.
Ron McDonald is the Chief Civilian Director of the Independent Investigations Office in BC, also known as IIO. The report into Lowndes' case is not public, but he says that he is recommending charges for the 3 officers involved. That announcement came out in December of 2022.
What I do is I look at all of the evidence, I consider everything that's before me, I consider all of the actions of police, and I have to determine whether or not I believe there are reasonable grounds to believe that the police may have committed an offense, and more particularly whether their actions were justified at law. And in this case, I've determined that there are reasonable grounds to believe that 3 officers may have committed an offense, and that is why it is going to the Crown.
While he could not provide many details as the case may go to trial, he says his office has been tracking statistics on violent interactions with police and Indigenous people in BC.
We have been tracking the racialized character of individuals who are involved in our files for the last, we're into our 3rd or 4th year of that now, and the statistics do show that Indigenous persons are overrepresented in our investigations. Of course, the cause for that, the reasons for that aren't really for us to speak to, but we do show that Indigenous persons in BC are overrepresented in our investigations, yes.
Here at the Gallery Gachet on Vancouver's downtown east side, an art display called Honor Their Names has been put together by Jared's mum. It showcases the names of Indigenous people killed by RCMP across Canada, including Jared.
For decades now, both the downtown east side and northern BC have been hotspots of police violence, including fatal violence.
These names represent just a handful of the violent interactions between police and Indigenous people across the country.
Indigenous lives matter. Jared's life mattered.
The recommendations for charges will be sent to Crown in the next few months, according to the IIO. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Now, we reached out to ACER to confirm the incident, but did not hear back by airtime. An Edmonton police officer who allegedly kicked an Indigenous teenager in the head in 2020 won't face criminal charges.
That incident may be related to one APTN reported on last week involving the Yukon RCMP's use of force and an incident involving an Indigenous teenager. But RCMP aren't talking, though several details are lining up. The 17-year-old girl's mother claims her daughter was hospitalized after being arrested by Whitehorse RCMP on the evening of April 8th. Yukon RCMP now say the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, or ACERT, is investigating an incident that took place that same evening. They say one person was arrested and later taken to hospital, just as the young woman did. The Yukon RCMP are investigating the incident and aren't releasing any more details at this time. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
We reached out to ACER to confirm the incident, but did not hear back by airtime. One Edmonton police officer who allegedly kicked an Indigenous teenager in the head in 2020 won't face criminal charges. Pacey Dumas, who was then 18, is missing a piece of his skull. Alberta's police watchdog calls the officer's actions hasty and violent and says it's reasonable to believe an offense may have been committed, but Crown attorneys recommended against laying charges. Dumas was allegedly kicked while laying on the ground and reaching into his pocket after telling police he had a knife. Family members of a Prince Albert man who died this week after being taken off life support have started a GoFundMe to raise money for his celebration of life. 40-year-old Bowden Umferville had been on life support since an April 1st altercation with police during a traffic stop. His family took him off life support Monday and he died Wednesday. The Severe Incident Response Team, or CERT, which investigates officer-involved deaths, said in a news release the vehicle involved had been reported stolen. An investigation is now ongoing. When officers pulled the vehicle over, the registered owner was inside. The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations in Saskatchewan has called for an independent investigation into the incident, citing a lack of trust in the justice system. The GoFundMe proceeds are to go to the funeral home caring for Umferville, with any remaining funds to be divided between his 5 children. More than $5,500 has been raised so far. All right, we have to step aside a moment, but we still have plenty more news to come. Stay with us. Welcome back to APTN National News. The winter weather may finally be going away, depending on where you live, but hockey is still going strong in many communities. Recently in the Paw, Manitoba, an all-female hockey tournament took place, and a major funding announcement was made by Kruger Products for hockey in Northern Manitoba. Now, I spoke with Bridget Laquette earlier this week for more details. Bridget, thank you so much for joining us here today. Now, this past weekend was the second The Paw Female Jamboree with all female hockey players and coaches, and you happened to be there. So my first question for you is why is a weekend like that so important?
Yeah, I guess, well, first off, I just want to say thank you for having me on. Yeah, I guess, because women's hockey, girls hockey hasn't been big in Manitoba, and I know that from growing up. I played boys hockey my entire life, and going in and seeing how they have 3 full groups and they had like a 2-day jamboree and having that opportunity for these girls. There were girls that drove in from, I think it was like Flin Flon and Thompson, and there was one girl that was from Gillam and Split Lake and Norway House. So it was awesome to see. And then some of them even just started playing hockey this year, and they were like, after a full year of skating and practicing with the Paw Minor hockey, like they definitely had improved, and you can see that.
And for you, Bridget, why is it important to you to stay in touch at the grassroots level? I mean, you're busy enough with the scout for the Chicago Blackhawks, and you're still playing. Why is it important for you to still keep in touch at that grassroots level?
Yeah, well, I guess, I know how it feels to be in such a secluded area, and especially, again, being in Manitoba and growing up in Manitoba. And yeah, I mean, the barriers and the fact that like the Paw is, so far up north, and there are so many communities up north that, have kids in minor hockey. And I do want to tie in that, Kruger Second Assist, Kruger Big Assist has done an incredible job in the last 2 years to help make hockey and sport more equitable and inclusive for the future, for the youth. So, I think that's pretty incredible, and to have jamborees like the one in the Paw, and like having financial help like Kruger Big Assist, it's just, it definitely goes a long way for sure.
Well, speaking of the Kruger Assist, can you tell us about the Kruger contribution? It was just announced that there was some money being distributed again for up north hockey.
Yeah, I guess, I'm very proud to be a part of the Kruger Big Assist, Second Assist, and yeah, I guess, they had the Second Assist gets a $50,000 grant to help make hockey more equitable. They could use those funds towards their hockey program. Like, for an example, the Cape Breton Female Hockey Team Association last year won the $50,000 grant, and they made hockey more accessible for their community. They helped create teams in the First Nation communities. They developed all-female referee crews, and they trained female and BIPOC coaches, and kind of implemented a financial assistance program. So, you know, they did a lot with their grant, and you know, it's awesome to see, and I'm very happy for those kids that they get the opportunity to play the sport of hockey.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of those grants, how and maybe why are grants and funding like that so important, and how do they promote sports in remote and Indigenous communities?
Oh yeah, well, you know, being Indigenous and being from an Indigenous community and having a First Nation and having to go through the whole, you know, the obstacles that you have to face as a First Nation athlete, I guess, which is the racism, or, you know, being in a rural area, for an example. Like, I know for myself, like my dad was a school bus driver. My mom ended up going back to school to become a teacher to put 3 kids through hockey. And they didn't do it alone. Like, it was an entire family effort, as well as I had our First Nation to help kind of offset the cost in that way. And I know that definitely went a long way. And to have such like a big company to have funds specifically for growing the game and making it more equitable, making it more inclusive, you know, it's awesome. And, you know, it makes me very proud to be a part of it.
Well, Bridget, we'll have to leave it there, but the work you and others do is just incredible, and it's so great to see. So thank you so much for coming on and updating us a little bit about that work.
Thank you so much.
All right, it's that time to pause the news once more. When we return, we'll have the story of a Mi'kmaq artist who's on the list for a prestigious prize. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Tara shared this photo of her son, Alexi. He recently performed at the Special Olympic provincial events in Regina, Saskatchewan. Alexi makes his family very proud by his example and love for dancing. That's a wonderful photo there. Thanks so much for that. This weekend, be sure to send us a picture to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be featured next week. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. We start on the East Coast at 2 degrees in St. John's and 15 in Halifax. 10 degrees in Happy Valley Goose Bay and 13 in Kuujjuaq. 15 in Quebec City and 13 in Montreal. 11 degrees in Toronto and 16 in North Bay. 12 degrees in Wawa and 6 in Sioux Lookout. -2 in Churchill and 10 degrees in The Pas. 10 degrees in Barons River and 12 in Winnipeg. 15 in a mix of sun and cloud in Regina and 17 in Saskatoon. 14 and clear in Meadow Lake and 8 degrees in Stony Rapids. As we head west, 13 in Fort Chippewa and 17 in Peace River. 17 in Edmonton and 19 in Calgary. Clear in 21 in Vancouver and clear in 22 in Quesnel. 17 in Prince Rupert and 19 in Fort Nelson. 9 degrees in Mayo and -1 in Rock River. 18 degrees in Fort Simpson and 11 in Yellowknife. -2 in Fort McPherson and 0 degrees in Colville Lake. -6 in Cambridge Bay and -3 in Chesterfield. 0 degrees in Arctic Bay and -1 in Iqaluit. Well, one of our own here at APTN has passed on to the spirit world. A respected elder, community leader, and board member of APTN from the Yukon has died. Shirley Adamson was a Wolf Clan member of the Tonquichan Council. Adamson held several instrumental roles during her lifetime, including Vice Chief of the AFN Yukon region and the Director and Chair of the Board of APTN. Adamson was a lifelong advocate on Indigenous languages, culture, and rights. And our condolences go out to her family and all those that knew her. Well, a Mi'kmaq artist has made the long list for Canada's largest prize for contemporary artists. But the nominee, who hails from the Millbrook First Nation, says the award is also about recognizing Indigenous art. Angel Moore reports.
Alan Sillyboy has been painting for over 4 decades. He is known for incorporating images of Wabanaki petroglyphs. His mentor, Shirley Bear, introduced Sillyboy to the stone carvings.
That was going to be our mission, to bring the petroglyphs back to our people, and they were unknown. They weren't even known to us. So that's kind of how it all started. And
this painting is called Four Caribou in the Spirit World.
So when I paint them, I bring back their memory, the spirit of them, or invoke the memory of them, and what caribou meant to us, but now they are gone.
Sillyboy recently found out he is one of 25 candidates on the National Gallery of Canada's Sobe Art Award long list. He says more Indigenous artists still need to be recognized.
Art galleries didn't consider why we did art, so it's fairly recent that that's sort of changed, and we're looked on as artists, and not just crafters, or just, we are fine artists too.
Sillyboy's paintings are usually a series of 6 or 10, such as the Red Dress series. The stars represent the ones that have passed into the spirit world.
The Creator knows where all women are. So if we can't see them, the Creator knows where they are.
Sillyboy has outgrown his studio space in the basement of this church community hall in Truro, and after 6 years is moving to a new studio, part of new development at the Millbrook First Nation, opening June 1st, with space to sell his art.
I think it's growing. I think it is. Yeah, it is. It's on the move for sure. I know from my experience that things are going really well, and especially the social media part of it. It's really helped a lot.
As for the Sobe Award, Sillyboy is happy he was nominated and hopes to inspire more Indigenous artists.
So now I'm really glad to see Indigenous artists winning awards and being part of the bigger part of the art world. So,
just to be on the long list, Sillyboy gets $10,000. The shortlisted artists will be announced on June 7th, and the winner, who receives $100,000, will be announced on November 18th. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Millbrook First Nation.
All right, that's going to wrap up our show on this final Friday in April. Our website, aptnnews.ca, has you covered if you'd like more information on our stories from tonight. For all of us here, thank you so much for joining us. Miigwech, Kinanaskmatin. Have a great night.